You ever walk into a place where you feel invisible until you're asked to leave? That's exactly what happened to a disabled war veteran, just trying to enjoy a quiet cup of coffee at a local diner until someone decided his presence was too uncomfortable. What started as a morning like any other turned into a moment that would shatter dignity, spark outrage, and force a town to look in the mirror. Stay with us, because this story gets darker than you think. And if you believe respect should be earned, not erased, give the video a like and hit subscribe to help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Every click helps us keep telling stories that matter. He always sat in the same booth, third from the window, far enough from the door to avoid the draft, but close enough to watch the morning light spill across the linoleum floor. To most, he was just that guy, quiet, alone, wrapped in a worn military jacket with patches faded from time and pain. His left sleeve hung empty, folded and clipped neatly to the shoulder. His right hand, weathered and veined, clutched a chipped ceramic mug like it was the only stable thing left in his world. His name was Raymond, though nobody at the diner had ever asked. The waitresses called him Sir out of habit. He never corrected them, didn't speak much, just nodded, smiled politely, and ordered the same thing every morning: black coffee to scrambled eggs and wheat toast, dry. He never complained when they got it wrong, never asked for anything extra. He was the kind of man you almost forgot was there until you really looked, and that's when the discomfort started. At first, it was just sideways glances. Some of the regulars would lower their voices when they noticed him. Mothers subtly steered their kids away from his booth. Teenagers snickered behind phones, nudging each other and daring one another to ask about the missing arm. No one said anything outright. Not yet, but you could feel it, that quiet tension that clings to the air when people decide someone doesn't belong. And in that diner, with its checkered floor and for $1.99 breakfast special, it was as if Raymond's presence interrupted something fragile, something they didn't want to confront. He didn't flinch when the bell above the door rang, didn't raise his head when groups came and went, just sat, still and steady, like a mountain carved by war and silence. But there was one thing people always noticed: his eyes, sharp, haunted, blue like ice melted by fire. Eyes that had seen too much, maybe survived too much, and still woke up early just to sit in peace for 30 quiet minutes. Nobody knew how long he'd been coming. Some said he showed up a year ago. Others claimed they remembered him from the old diner before it changed owners. No one really asked. No one really knew. And maybe that was the problem. He didn't fit into the world they built in that little corner of town. He wasn't loud or dangerous. He wasn't begging or bothering anyone. He was just there, a daily reminder of something they'd rather not see: that war doesn't end when the fighting stops, that some battles come home with you. And soon, someone would decide that was just too uncomfortable. Raymond didn't always sit alone. There was a time not so long ago when he was surrounded by voices, dirt, heat, and the kind of brotherhood that only forms when death is close enough to smell. He was a sergeant in the U.S. Army, third tour in Afghanistan when the blast hit. An IED buried beneath what looked like a harmless pile of rocks. It tore through the side of their Humvee like it was made of paper. He woke up 3 days later in a military hospital with his left arm gone, half his hearing damaged, and 3 of his men dead. The news came in pieces, just like he had. One of the nurses called him a hero. He almost laughed, but the pain meds made it hard to move. The real heroes, he thought, were the ones who didn't make it back. They didn't have to live like this. Half a man, half a life, half a future. After discharge, things unraveled faster than he expected. The Army paid him a pension, gave him a medal he never looked at, and sent him home with a suitcase full of pills and no instructions on how to survive the silence. Home wasn't home anymore. The town felt smaller, quieter. Strangers stared, and friends didn't know what to say. His fiancée left 6 months in, said she couldn't watch him suffer, said he wasn't the same. She wasn't wrong. Raymond found the diner by accident. One cold morning, wandering aimlessly with nowhere to be. He saw the steam on the windows and smelled bacon on the air. It was warm inside, familiar in a way nothing else was. He sat down, ordered coffee, and for the first time in months, he didn't feel like a ghost. So he came back. The routine gave him something to hold on to. Every day, same time, same seat. Black coffee, 2 eggs, toast. It didn't matter if people stared. He wasn't there for them. But even in that quiet corner, memories came uninvited. Some days, the sound of the coffee machine hissing reminded him of the explosion. Other times, the clatter of dishes made him flinch. The waitress once dropped a plate behind him, and before he knew it, he'd hit the floor, heart pounding, breath gone. No one laughed, but no one helped either. He got up, brushed himself off, and went back to his coffee like nothing happened. Raymond didn't ask for sympathy. He didn't want pity. He wanted normal. But normal is a fragile illusion when your body is a map of violence and your soul walks with ghosts. And while the coffee stayed the same, the people around him were starting to change. Whispers were growing louder, stares longer. It wouldn't be long before someone finally said what they'd all been thinking. That maybe Raymond, quiet, broken Raymond, didn't belong in their world anymore. It started with a laugh, a sharp, awkward laugh from a teenage boy sitting 3 booths over. He wasn't laughing at a joke. He was laughing at Raymond. The boy had his phone angled just enough to capture a blurry photo. Raymond hunched over his coffee, lost in thought. The caption on the screen read, "Real Life Terminator, Breakfast Edition." His friends snickered. One of them dared another to go ask if the arm was blown off in real life or just cosplay. They never got the courage. But the damage was done. The staff pretended not to see. The waitress, Sandy, a sweet woman in her 50s, who had once called Raymond one of the good ones, avoided his booth that morning, sent the new kid instead. No eye contact, no "how are you today," just a silent plate drop and a quick retreat. The regulars were no better. There was Mrs. Parker, who always sat by the window with her Bible and sweet tea. She started bringing a tray of disinfectant wipes, wiped the table 3 times before sitting. Once more if she noticed Raymond was in the room. Another man, Dale, former car salesman, full of loud stories and louder opinions, began calling Raymond Captain Hook when he thought no one was listening. People laughed. Not everyone, but enough. There were still moments of silence, of decency. A young woman once left a note on his table. "Thank you for your service." She was gone before he could read it. Raymond folded it and put it in his jacket pocket. He never took it out again, but he carried it like armor. Still, the energy was shifting. He could feel it. The diner, once his quiet refuge, now buzzed with undercurrents of discomfort, not his, but theirs. It was like his presence challenged their idea of normal, of peace, of breakfast being safe and easy. Raymond, without speaking, reminded them of war, loss, pain. And people don't like their comfort disturbed. One morning, a woman with 2 kids asked to be moved to the other side of the diner. "My son gets scared," she whispered to the hostess, glancing at Raymond's profile. "He keeps asking what's wrong with him." The hostess nodded and moved them without a word. Raymond heard every word. He didn't flinch, didn't speak, just picked up his toast and took a slow bite, like none of it mattered. But his hand was shaking. People fear what they don't understand. And instead of asking, instead of seeing the man beneath the scars, they created stories around him. Stories that painted him as something strange, something broken, something dangerous. And whispers, once they start, don't fade. They spread. Soon, someone would act on them. And when they did, it wouldn't be a whisper anymore. It happened on a Thursday. The diner was half full, the usual hum of clinking dishes and low conversation filling the air. Raymond was on his 2nd sip of coffee when he noticed something different, a hesitation. The waitress didn't come. His table remained empty. No eggs. No toast. Then the manager appeared. Kevin was new, late 30s, polished shoes, clean shave, the kind of man who spoke in customer service slogans and forced smiles. He'd only been working there for 3 weeks, and until that morning, Raymond had never heard his voice. "Morning, sir," Kevin said, stepping up to the table, hands folded in front of him like he was about to deliver bad news in a hospital hallway. Raymond looked up. "Coffee's fine," he muttered. "Just waiting on breakfast." Kevin cleared his throat. "Actually, I need to talk to you for a second." "Mind stepping outside with me?" Raymond blinked. He'd been asked many things in his life, to fight, to bleed, to bury friends, but never this. Still, he stood, slowly, and followed Kevin out to the sidewalk. The morning air was sharp. The manager didn't waste time. "I just wanted to say, we appreciate your service," Kevin began, like reading from a script. "And your loyalty to the diner." Raymond said nothing. He already felt the punch coming. But Kevin continued, voice softening in that way people do when they're about to betray you. "We've had some complaints." "About the food?" Raymond asked flatly. Kevin shook his head, almost embarrassed. "No, not the food. About you." A pause, long enough to feel personal. "Some customers," he said, "have expressed that your presence makes them uncomfortable. It's nothing you've done." "Of course not. But, you know, families come in. Children ask questions. And, well, it's just a bit of a disruption." Raymond stared at him. "You're asking me not to come back," he said. Kevin shifted his weight. "It's not a ban, just a request. Maybe give it a break. Let things settle down. People need time to adjust." Raymond looked down at his one hand, then back up at the man in front of him. "They've had 20 years to adjust." Kevin didn't respond. Raymond didn't make a scene. He didn't shout, didn't cry, didn't throw anything. He simply walked back inside, left a $5 bill on the table, and left the diner without touching his coffee. Inside, no one looked up. No one said a word. And outside, as Raymond stepped into the street, the sun broke through the clouds, warm on his face, cruel in its timing. That booth in the corner would stay empty for days, but his absence wouldn't go unnoticed for long. 3 days passed before Raymond spoke to anyone. He didn't return to the diner, didn't pass by, didn't even walk on the same side of the street. He stayed home, a small, dim apartment on the edge of town with more memories than furniture. The kind of place where silence echoed louder than noise. But something gnawed at him. Not the rejection, not even the embarrassment. It was the why now? Why him? Why had his silence, his routine, suddenly become offensive? On the 4th morning, Raymond put on his jacket, the one with the faded unique patch, and walked back to the diner. Not to eat, not to sit. He just stood outside, looking through the window at the booth where he used to be invisible. Kevin saw him. There was hesitation in the manager's face, but he came out, clipboard in hand, like he could shield himself with company policy. "Raymond," he said, cautious. "Everything okay?" Raymond nodded slowly. "Just came to ask something." "Sure. What exactly did I do wrong?" Kevin glanced over his shoulder, then back. "It's not about you, man. Like I said, it's the customers. It's the vibe. We've had folks say they don't feel comfortable." "With what?" "With the way you look, your arm, the energy, the energy." Raymond's voice didn't rise, but it chilled the space between them. "You mean the part where I quietly drink coffee and leave a tip?" Kevin shifted. "Look, I'm just doing my job." "It's not personal, isn't it?" Raymond asked, stepping closer. "Because it felt pretty personal when you asked me to disappear." Kevin opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say, nothing that would make it right. Raymond looked back at the window. People were inside, laughing, eating, living in a world that had made space for their comfort, but not his sacrifice. "Do they know," Raymond asked, "what it's like to hear bones crack under fire? To watch your brothers bleed out while you drag what's left of yourself to safety?" Kevin looked down. "Do they even care?" No answer. Just the sound of a car passing behind them and a gust of wind brushing against Raymond's worn jacket. "I didn't ask for pity," he said. "I just wanted peace. A damn cup of coffee and a place to sit. But if me existing is too much for your breakfast crowd, then maybe the problem isn't me." He turned and walked away, one step at a time. Dignified, steady, wounded, but not weak. And just behind him, unnoticed, a teenage girl sitting near the window had filmed the entire thing. She didn't post it right away. But when she did, everything would change. The video was only 38 seconds long. No music, no fancy editing, just a shaky phone recording, shot through the diner's window. Raymond standing outside, one sleeve pinned neatly to his shoulder, his voice calm but cutting. "If me existing is too much for your breakfast crowd, then maybe the problem isn't me." That was the line, the one that broke the internet. The girl who filmed it was 17. Her name was Maya. She hadn't meant to post it, not at first. She'd just recorded it out of instinct, like watching something you knew was wrong but didn't know how to stop. But that night, lying in bed, the scene replayed in her mind. The silence, the look in Raymond's eyes. By morning, the clip had been uploaded to TikTok with a single caption: "They kicked out a veteran for making people uncomfortable." It exploded. Within hours, the video was reposted on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thousands of comments poured in, then tens of thousands. Veterans from all over the country shared it. Parents, activists, students. The comment sections filled with outrage, heartbreak, and disbelief. This man fought for us, and this is how we thank him. How fragile is your comfort if a disabled vet threatens it? Where is this diner? I'm never going there. By the end of the day, Raymond had become a symbol, not just of disrespect toward veterans, but of something deeper. How society turns its back on the uncomfortable truths it doesn't want to face. The local news caught wind within 24 hours. A reporter tracked Maya down for an interview. Then they tried to find Raymond, but he wasn't answering his door. Not because he was hiding, but because he didn't know. He didn't use social media. He didn't watch much TV. His world was small by design. But when the phone started ringing, from numbers he didn't recognize, voices asking for his side of the story, he realized something had changed. Sandy, the waitress who'd once avoided his booth, showed up outside his apartment with tears in her eyes. "I didn't know," she said. "I mean, I did. But I didn't do anything. And I'm sorry." Raymond didn't respond. He didn't know what to say to a world that had suddenly remembered he existed, not as a man, but as a headline. The diner, once tucked quietly on Main Street, had become a target. Review bombs, protesters, veterans standing in silence with signs that read he deserved a table. And inside, Kevin, the manager, watched it all unfold. His face never made it into the video, but his voice had. Now, the country knew exactly who had asked a man to disappear, and it was too late to take it back. Within 48 hours, the diner's Yelp page was flooded with one-star reviews. Not about the food, not about the service, just line after line of fury. Refused a hero. "I wouldn't eat here if it were the last place on earth. This establishment cares more about comfort than character." You lost a customer and gained national shame. Google reviews followed. Then Facebook. Then the local Chamber of Commerce website. The diner's phone rang non-stop. Some calls were death threats. Others were veterans quietly offering to stand with Raymond if he ever decided to come back. The owner, a man named Steve who'd inherited the business from his father, was blindsided. He wasn't in the diner that day, hadn't seen the conversation, but none of that mattered now. He tried damage control, released a statement on social media. "We respect all veterans and apologize for any misunderstanding. The employee in question has been spoken to." It didn't help. The internet doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive easy. Reporters swarmed the block. Customers filmed themselves walking out in protest. One woman chained herself to the booth where Raymond used to sit, holding a sign that read, "You served. We see you." But Raymond stayed silent. He watched from a distance as the world debated his worth. Some people claimed he was overreacting, that it was just a request, not an expulsion. Others accused the manager of ableism, cowardice, even hatred. And still others, veterans mostly, reached out with quiet solidarity. One morning, a man knocked on his door. Vietnam vet, leather jacket, gray beard. He didn't say much, just handed Raymond a box. Inside, a small plaque. "For those who fought and still fight, even in silence." It meant more than the medals ever did. Meanwhile, Kevin, the manager, began receiving threats. Someone posted his personal phone number. His inbox filled with hate. He stopped coming to work. Then he resigned. Steve, desperate to save the business, made a public plea on local TV. "I'd like to formally apologize to Mr. Raymond," he said. "We were wrong, and we want to make it right." He offered Raymond a public invitation to return, a lifetime of free meals, a plaque on the booth, even a day named in his honor. But Raymond said no. He didn't want headlines. He didn't want hashtags. He didn't want to become a mascot for a cause that ignored him when it mattered most. He wanted dignity, and maybe a quiet place to drink his coffee, not out of guilt, but out of respect. The story could have ended there, a moment of shame, a public apology, and the world moving on. But someone kept digging. A local journalist named Amber Torres, who had been covering the fallout from the beginning, started receiving anonymous tips, emails, voicemails, former employees, ex-customers, all sharing the same message. This wasn't the first time. Amber followed the thread, and what she found peeled back the polite face of the diner and exposed something uglier underneath. 3 years earlier, an elderly man with Parkinson's had been asked to leave because his hands made people nervous. A year after that, a young autistic teen who flapped his hands while waiting for pancakes was quietly told the diner wasn't the right place for that kind of behavior. And then there was the black veteran who was denied service during a busy weekend. No reason given. He'd left without a word. Each story on its own seemed isolated, but together they painted a pattern: comfort over conscience, cleanliness over compassion, a quiet policy of exclusion, spoken not through rules, but through discomfort and silence. And at the center of several of those incidents, Kevin. He'd been working there off and on for years, promoted to manager not because he was exceptional, but because he was safe, the kind of man who followed the unspoken rules of keeping the peace, even when it meant stepping over dignity. Amber confronted Steve, the owner, with the findings. At first, he denied it, said there was no written record, no complaints filed. But silence doesn't mean innocence. It often means fear. And once the stories broke, more people came forward. Former employees admitted they were discouraged from engaging with customers who made others uncomfortable. No one ever said the word disabled or different. They didn't have to. It was discrimination wrapped in decency, prejudice in a polite tone. And the town, now watching closely, wasn't having it. Community leaders spoke out. Local veterans held a march. A petition was started to have Kevin barred from managing any public-facing business in the county. It gained over 50,000 signatures in a week. Steve was forced to hold a press conference. His voice cracked as he admitted what he'd known. Not all of it, but enough. "I failed," he said. "I let this happen under my watch. I thought keeping things quiet meant keeping things under control. I see now." That silence was complicity. Raymond watched it all unfold from his small living room. He didn't feel vindicated. He felt tired, because it shouldn't take a viral video or a national outcry for people to treat one another with decency. It should be the default. The booth sat empty for over 2 weeks. Clean, polished, untouched. Some customers took photos with it. Others left folded napkins with messages written in pen. "We're sorry. You matter. Thank you." Raymond, a small vase of plastic flowers appeared, then a framed print of the American flag. It became less of a table and more of a shrine. Steve, the owner, didn't know what to do with it. Every attempt to return the diner to normal failed. Revenue had dropped nearly 40%. The staff was exhausted. The once busy mornings were now eerily quiet. So Steve made a decision. He reached out to Raymond personally, not through a statement, not through a press release, but by showing up alone. He stood outside Raymond's apartment for nearly 10 minutes before knocking. When Raymond opened the door, he didn't speak right away. He looked thinner, older, worn. Steve removed his cap and held it in both hands. "I came to apologize," he said. Raymond stared at him. "I know I said it publicly," Steve continued, "but I needed to say it here to you, directly." Raymond didn't invite him in. He didn't need to. Some conversations are meant to be had at the door. "I failed you," Steve said. "And others too, apparently. I didn't know. Or maybe I didn't want to know. Either way, it's on me." Raymond was quiet for a moment. Then, "So why are you here?" Steve swallowed. "Because I'd like you to come back. Not for free meals. Not for publicity. Just as a customer. Just as you." Raymond looked past him, down the street. "I don't think I can," he said. Steve nodded. "I figured. I just wanted to try. To do something right for once." He turned to leave, but Raymond's voice stopped him. "It wasn't just about me," he said. "It was about the moment you decided everyone else's comfort was more important than my presence. You asked me to disappear so no one had to feel anything. Steve turned back. And now you're asking me to return, so everyone can feel better about themselves. He didn't say it cruelly, just honestly. Steve lowered his eyes. You're right. There was a long pause. Then Raymond stepped out onto the porch, looked him in the eyes. That place was the only normal thing I had left, and it was taken from me with a smile. Steve didn't argue. He just stood there. I'm not angry, Raymond said. Just done. Steve left a sealed envelope on the railing, a handwritten note, a formal apology, and a check. Raymond never cashed it. He returned to the diner once, weeks later, not to sit, but to stand by the window. He looked at the booth, at the flowers, at the strangers honoring his absence, and then he walked away. Some wounds don't want closure. They just want space to heal. The booth remained empty. Steve never reassigned it. He left the plaque, the flowers, and the folded napkin with Raymond's name written in bold black ink, untouched. People still came. Some ordered coffee and left without drinking it. Some stood in silence by the window. Others took photos and whispered to their children, explaining what happened and why it mattered. But Raymond never returned. Instead, he found a different place, a smaller diner, across town, owned by a quiet woman named Lena. She didn't ask questions the first day he came in, just poured him a cup of coffee, warm and full. When she noticed he was missing an arm, she didn't flinch. When he thanked her, she simply smiled and said, "Cream or sugar?" He sat by the window. No whispers, no stares, just the sound of a radio playing soft blues and the gentle clatter of forks on plates. Over time, Raymond became a part of that place. Not a symbol, not a story, just a man, with his coffee and peace. One morning, Lena sat across from him during a slow hour. "I know who you are," she said softly. Raymond didn't respond. "I saw the video, heard the noise, read the comments. You don't have to talk about it," she added. "Just wanted you to know, you're safe here." He looked at her. There was no pity in her eyes, no guilt, just presence. That, Raymond realized, was what respect looked like. Not empty apologies, not headlines, not free meals or photo ops or viral posts begging for redemption. Just being seen, truly seen, without needing to perform pain for acceptance. And for the first time in a long while, he smiled. Not out of habit, but because something inside had finally settled. We like to believe we honor the people who serve, in war, in silence, in suffering. But too often, we honor them only when it's convenient, only when it flatters our self-image, only when their trauma doesn't disrupt our comfort. But real respect, it happens quietly. It shows up, unannounced, in the form of a chair pulled out, and no questions asked. How many Raymonds have we passed by, ignored, judged? Not because of what they did, but because of what they remind us of. So now we ask you, would you have stood up for him? Or just asked to be moved? Let us know in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe. And remember, sometimes the loudest act of courage is just making room at the table.